I walked into Silver Ridge Police Headquarters on a Tuesday morning with a pressed uniform and a simple promise to myself. Today I start fixing what's been broken for years, and I don't make it past the front desk before a voice snaps behind me like a rubber band. "Where'd you get that uniform, pal?" And before I can even say my name, Sergeant Trent Malloy is on me, grabbing the collar, slamming me chest first into the reception counter, cuffing my wrists tight while the lobby hums like nothing's wrong. Phones ringing, printers spitting a coffee lid, hissing, someone laughing down a hallway like I'm a joke. And I keep my breathing slow because 20 years taught me compliance buys time and resistance buys a casket. And I decide to buy 9 minutes. 9 minutes of laminate pressing into my cheek badge, digging into my ribs, eyes on a corkboard photo of the K-9 unit while 13 officers watch and don't say a word. And when the radio finally chirps that my badge number checks out, the lobby goes quiet. In that way, people get quiet when a truth lands heavier than they expected. Malloy fumbles the key. The cuff pops and I turn around and tell him what he forgot to ask. "My name is Marcus Hale. As of this morning, I'm your chief." And he says, "Protocol." And I say, "You didn't ask a single question. You saw a black man in blues and called it criminal." He says, "Misunderstanding." And I say, "It was exactly what it looked like." He says, "We take care of our own." And I tell him, "Me too." Then I pick up my briefcase, straighten my uniform, walk to the elevator, feeling a hallway full of eyes that want to look away and can't. And that's my first 3 minutes as chief. Yeah, that happened. 6 hours earlier, I was standing in my kitchen straightening my tie while my kid Theo ate cereal like he was racing a clock. He's 16 loud when he's laughing and quieter than you'd expect when it gets real. He asked if I was nervous, and I joked back, "Are you?" And he said, "For you?" "Yeah." And I pinned my badge and the kitchen light hit the gold just so. And I slipped the worn leather notebook into my bag, the one my dad gave me that says, "Do right even when it costs." And Theo tapped the cover like he was testing the luck of it. "You really live by that." "Huh?" And I said, "Every day. Be home for dinner." He said, "Promise." I said. And he squinted like a human lie detector. "You always say that. I always mean it." I told him. And we both knew meaning it is the easy part and keeping it is the work. You want the truth about Silver Ridge. The place had a reputation nobody said aloud, and everybody understood. 49 civilian complaints in 30 months and 1 count. One led to real discipline. Black drivers were nearly 4 times more likely to be stopped for the same, nothing as their neighbors across town. Use of force happened most in the neighborhoods with the fewest parks and the most patience. And when people signed their names and told their stories, it all slid into a folder labeled insufficient evidence. The old chief cut a cake, shook hands, cashed out, and the council said they wanted someone who didn't owe anyone. And I guess I became the guy who didn't belong to anybody. You know what I mean. Elevator opens on the 2nd floor. My nameplate is still a little crooked on the door, and there's a sticky note stuck to a policy binder like a wink. "Welcome to Silver Ridge. Looking forward to working with you, Detective Eva Kim, Internal Affairs." And 2 minutes later, she's in the doorway with the kind of tired that makes you efficient, she says. I heard what happened downstairs, and she sets down a folder thick enough to ruin a coffee table. Malloy's history. 12 complaints, excessive force, false statements, profiling, each one stamped. Not sustained like a rubber stamp could make it all disappear. And she hands me more. 8 on Officer Pike, 7 on Harlan. More scattered like broken glass across the floor. I ask if this is all of it, and she smiles without joy and gives me another binder. And I understand in one glance that misunderstanding won't be our headline. Our headline is work. The mayor calls Denise Alvarez's voice like every sentence has to pass a vote. "The video is already online," she says, and for a second I feel the floor tilt. A city worker named Luis Ortega recorded those last 3 minutes, and by lunch it's everywhere. The mayor tells me to say as little as possible and let it cool off, and I tell her we're not cooling anything. I'm opening IA 25-0196. Malloy goes on leave pending investigation. She sighs and warns me it'll get ugly, and I say it already is. I just plan to make it visible. By the evening news, the union is on TV. Buck Densmore with a row of uniforms behind him like a billboard calling it a misunderstanding. Calling Malloy decorated warning that rushing to judgment gets officers hurt. And I turn the volume down and look at Eva, because I don't trust my voice when I'm that mad. She says, "You're going to want to see this." And she opens complaint, C23041. A 19-year-old named Daryl Meeks with 2 cracked ribs after a rolling stop. ER photos of purple bruises like storm clouds. Malloy wrote, subject became combative, finding not sustained, next file. Monica Reyes, daycare teacher, expired, tags a roadside pat-down that read, like humiliation, finding sustained with counseling, which is cop speak for a chat and a signature and back to work. Next file. Pastor Glenn Withers, 61, stopped while driving a church van full of donations, because circling a block on a Saturday is suspicious if you're doing charity in the wrong zip code. Finding unfounded, like the word could vacuum the memory out of his chest. And I stop reading and stare at the parking lot because you can feel when a department senses the tide, and it's this a lot of movement that doesn't go anywhere. Next morning I hold a short presser because if I don't speak, someone else will speak for me. I say what happened in that lobby matters, because if it can happen to a chief in full uniform with a badge and a resume, it tells you a story about everyone else who doesn't walk in with the same armor. I say we're reviewing every complaint from the last 3 years. I say body cams must be on for every civilian contact and footage will be reviewed weekly by people who don't work for me. Then I stop talking and by dinner my name is a headline and by bedtime Theo is getting DMs. You good? He texts, I'm fine. I text back, that doesn't sound like fine, he sends. And he's not wrong. Day 4. The union files a grievance claiming I violated the contract with leave. A talk radio host calls me a political ladder climber. And when Eva leaves the building, someone leaves her a message, a text promising something ugly for her daughter if she doesn't back off. And when she walks to her car, her rear tire is sliced clean. She changes it under the parking lot lights with the kind of focus mean people mistake for fear she files a report. She refuses to run, and I sit in my office with a throat full of nails. Day 6. Theo comes home with a torn sleeve. Some kids whose fathers wear badges tell him I'm making their families look bad. They shove him once, twice, try to embarrass him more than hurt him, and he tells me not to make it worse by going to the school. I see that look, the I just want this to stop look, and I promise I'll pick my battles. And that night at 3 a.m., I pour cold coffee and stare at a blank resignation email with the subject line written and nothing else finger hovering above the keys while the house is too quiet. And Eva calls without hello. She says, I've been fighting this machine 2 years and I was ready to quit 100 times. Why didn't you? I ask. Because quitting means admitting some people don't deserve justice, she says. And I close the laptop and delete the draft and stand in the kitchen with the old notebook in my hand, reminding me that words on a cover mean nothing if you can't drag them through a bad week. Day 9. A different email arrives, the Mountain West Justice Center. Civil rights lawyers who know the city's corridors better than most officers do, a 40-page brief offering to support our internal review stats. Sworn statements, plaintiffs ready to break NDAs if a court lets them. It reads like a map and a dare. And that afternoon, Officer Jamie Ruiz knocks on my door, 3 years on the job. Still the kind of kid who says sir because he means it. He lays down a petition, 173 signatures from officers across shifts and units. We stand with accountability. Chief, we joined to protect and serve, not to protect misconduct. He says the union will come for them, and he says they know. And I shake his hand and tell him I will remember every name on that page, and I mean it. The next day, an investigative reporter named Kara Flynn publishes a piece that makes my phone vibrate through a budget meeting. Sentinel Tactics LLC, our favorite training vendor, paying the union a 14% administrative fee into a discretionary fund that somehow pays for golf tournaments and leadership retreats. Legal by a hair, ugly by a mile, and Buck gets on camera and says everyone benefits, training is expensive, move along, and I turn off the TV because I need my blood pressure intact for what's coming. Then the envelope shows up with no return address, just a black USB drive that looks like nothing, and turns out to be everything. One audio file, 40 minutes, chairs, scraping papers, shuffling. Then Buck's voice like he's teaching a class on how to bury a thing under a rug. We've buried complaints before, we'll do it again. IA finds insufficient evidence, case closed, and if the next chief doesn't play ball, we make him irrelevant. File grievances, jam him up, drown him in process until he quits or quiets down. There's a laugh in the room, not villainous, just casual, the sound of people who believe nothing can touch them. They name council members they can lean on. They say Eva has no allies. They strategize about avoiding media, dodging federal eyes holding the line, and I save the file in 3 places, send a copy to the Justice Center, then call a number, a friend at the U.S. Attorney's office gave me years back just in case, and the next morning Special Agent Meera Patel from the FBI is sitting across from me with a notebook and a face that says she hears more than you think. She listens to the tape scrolls, the spreadsheets Eva and I built after midnight. skims Kara's new follow-up, and when she's done, she closes the notebook like a judge sets a pen down and says, "We're opening a civil rights investigation. Once it goes public, it will get loud and messy. Tell your family." And I nod because my family already lives in the mess and deserves to know the music is about to turn up. By sunset that day, the city feels different. 5,000 people show up at City Hall without much chanting, just presence. Bodies as evidence. A mother named Grace Coleman stands with her son's photo. Eyes meet mine across cameras. She mouths, "Thank you." And I don't know if I deserve it yet, but I take it and tell myself to make it true. The council schedules a hearing for Wednesday, and that room is packed to its last corner, cameras stacked like scaffolding, the air hot with opinions that haven't been said aloud. Councilmember Whitman hits the gavel, and I don't bring notes because there's nothing to memorize. I speak like I talk to my kid when it matters. Yesterday, I walked into this building in a uniform I earned and was cuffed in the lobby before I could say my name. If that happens to me, imagine a 19-year-old with a warehouse badge and a quiet voice that doesn't carry in rooms like this. Imagine a woman driving to work with expired tags because payday is Friday. Then I give them numbers until people start sitting up straighter. I invite testimony, and Daryl appears on a video call from a studio with a mattress and a lamp and tells his story without performing it. Monica stands in a blue blouse and talks in a way that makes the room honest against its will. Pastor Withers speaks like he's inviting the council to church, and I play the audio. "We've buried complaints before. We'll do it again." And Buck stares at the table while his lawyer says, on advice of counsel, no comment. Malloy's lawyer invokes the fifth, like silence can protect him from the picture that tape paints. And when the room stops buzzing, I ask for the vote. Reforms, simple on paper and heavy in practice. Body cams on every civilian contact with automatic upload and weekly external review. An independent oversight board with subpoena power. Public quarterly reporting of complaints and outcomes. An early warning system for officers who keep stacking force and stops. Termination of the Sentinel contract and a clean competitive rebid with no side fees. The motion passes 6-1 and half the room exhales while the other half looks like they swallowed a lemon. Buck stands and walks out. Malloy follows, and I don't smile because winning a vote isn't winning a culture, it's just opening a door you still have to walk through. The weeks that follow are not pretty. 11 officers turn in badges, some resign, some are fired. The FBI interviews pile up like books you have to read to graduate. Buck steps down as union president, and the interim is Jamie Ruiz, and the room feels a notch lighter. When we sit down, body cam footage starts to look like public service and not performance. Traffic stops, shift. Complaints don't vanish, but they get handled. Like the people who wrote them are real. A talk radio host calls me soft on crime and then moves on to potholes. And somewhere in there, tragedy hits. Officer Pike dies. And I'm not going to tell you how, because the type of death doesn't change the grief. Kara writes, carefully. Buck goes on camera and blames me, and Theo asks if I'm breaking people. I tell him the truth. This job will always carry weight and accountability. Adds more. Some of us carry it. Some of us crumble. Most of us wake up and try to do better today than yesterday. And he nods with eyes older than his age, and I hate that for him and love him for it. There's a ceremony. No one films a folding table, stale coffee policy sheets that look like receipts and cut like scalpels. I sign a rule that says any stop without an activated camera is presumed out of policy, unless you can prove otherwise. I sign an early warning protocol with real teeth, retraining first suspension, next separation. If you keep flagging. Theo stands next to me, trying not to grin, and failing dad. You kept your promise, he says, and I put a hand on his shoulder and tell him, not just to you, to the folks whose names filled those files, to Daryl and Monica and Pastor Withers, to everyone who got told misunderstanding while their life was being understood. Just fine. And that night, I step out into the lot, and the station looks the same as the day I arrived. Same bricks, flag sky, going from blue to black. But the pressure feels different. Accountability has a sound, and it's quieter than you think. It's a lobby where people look twice before acting once. A radio check that happens first instead of last, a son sleeping easier because his dad made it home for dinner like he said he would. People ask if I think Malloy is a monster, and I tell them monsters make it easy. Malloy is ordinary, Tuesday kind of force, Friday kind of paperwork. The shape a system takes when nobody tells the truth about what it rewards. And if you're asking whether I'd do it again, knowing the threats and headlines and the way grief finds your house even when you keep the porch light off, Yes, because harm, you can see, is easier to fix than harm people pretend isn't there. And because silence costs more than speaking. And because those 9 minutes at a front desk told me exactly what kind of chief I had to be if I wanted to look my kid in the eye and say we're doing this for real. Here's the part where I hand you the mic. Tell the truth in public. It's rarer than it should be if you watch this and think, I went too far. Say why and show your work. If you think I didn't go far enough, tell me what you've seen where you live. If you believe cuffing me was protocol, defend it. If you believe it was bias, say it out loud. Have you filed a complaint that vanished into a folder? Have you ever stopped a kid and realized halfway through you were projecting fear instead of reading the moment? Have you been that kid? Drop your city, your story, your take. I'll be in the comments. And if hard conversations like this matter to you, messy ones that push past slogans into something real, subscribe, share this with the person who argues with you in good faith. Keep your cameras on, keep your heart open, and remember what my dad wrote on that old notebook. Do right even when it costs, because in a place like this it always does, and that's exactly why it's worth it.